Good morning and afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Meet the Expert. I'm Bae Mikiwa, a search targeting global product lead here at Google, and I'm thrilled to have you all here today. Today, we'll be diving into the topic of account structures for AI readiness, an area that's quickly evolving and crucial for your success in today's dynamic ads market. My co-speakers today are Brooks Royster, Keywords Product Manager, and Brandon Irvin, the Director of Search Targeting Product Manager. So shortly, we'll dive into what account structures for AI readiness really means, the evolution of Google search ads, and why simple account structures matter today, and review some guidance on how to think about future-proofing your accounts. So simple account structures, which focus on the values and inputs that really matter to your business, have always been foundational for the success of your ads campaigns and performance. But admittedly, as Google, we have not really given guidance on how to actually structure your campaigns for optimal performance. So let's start with why account simplification is ever so important today. So we know the consumer journey is not linear. Let's face it, the modern consumer journey is in a straight line. It's a maze of touch points from websites to social media to reviews, word of mouth, that is continuously evolving. Traditionally, marketers have relied on your own intuition or experience with some of our legacy best practices and some educated guesses to really predict where the consumer will be and what message will actually resonate with them. But, as this maze is becoming more complex, those methods are also hitting their own limits. It will be impossible to predict the consumer touch points without using AI. And we know that AI will also empower you all to do really, really well with your marketing initiatives and increase your productivity and creativity. So as we've seen, AI has a lot of potential, even when it comes to aiding marketing efforts in simplifying your account structures. But it's not a magic wand. There are still significant hurdles we need to overcome to hopefully actually unleash the power of AI. One of those biggest hurdles we see today are actually keywords. Shocker, but keywords seem simple enough. But you just choose your match type, your settings, location, and you're all set, right? But we do know that the actual keyword selection and maintenance process takes a lot of work. And in reality, they're a massive source of complexity that's holding back our automation systems. If you think about it, you're using your keywords to create very intricate campaign structures, segment your audiences into countless groups, and tailor your bids for every possible combination. And this might have been necessary when we needed more manual interventions and had less data and computing power. But today, doing all of these manual interventions is actually like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube. So something else that we see can actually impede you from leveraging our AI systems are following some legacy best practices, which we know this is understandable. We've all invested a lot of time and resources into learning what actually works for your campaigns and implementing this for future performance. We know that change can be scary, but especially when it involves overhauling entire account structures that have been meticulously built over the years. But however, continue to actually follow some of these best practices while our systems are evolving for AI can actually come at a cost. This can lead to some missed opportunities. AI powered solutions offer significant advantages such as improved targeting and efficiency and more performance gains. We also know it's leading to wasted resources. Maintaining these complex and outdated structures are really difficult and actually just require a lot of manual effort. And they can actually limit innovation, as these legacy best practices can stifle your creativity and experimentation. So they lead you to stay within your comfort zone, which makes it difficult to explore new ideas and embrace emerging technologies. We do know that when customers are embracing simplified structures and AI, they do tend to see some gains. As discussed, the complex keyword structures can be a major obstacle to AI-powered advertising. But Bonprix, the case study featured here, a European brand, actually has seen success with simplifying their structures. As their business grew, they so did the complexity within their campaigns. Their campaigns ballooned to over 1,000 keywords and became just a very tangled web and really hard to manage and optimize. Their keyword-heavy approach was hindering Bonprix's ability to actually leverage AI effectively, and the sheer volume of data was overwhelming their measurement and reporting capabilities, which limited their ability to action and deliver optimal results. So Bonprix, over about 3 months, really focused on reducing their keyword count, and they were able to reduce it by a staggering 90% simply by embracing things like broad match, VBB, and other AI-powered solutions. This simplification had a profound effect, not only on their performance, but also on their time management, which led to improved efficiency and also enhanced automation because we had better, cleaner data to actually process, which helped their campaigns perform better. Lastly, they also were more agile, which meant that they could actually spend more time on those strategic innovations and reinvesting the performance gains that they saw. So, how did we get here in the first place? I'm going to pass it over to Brandon for an overview of the search ads product evolution and how AI will impact your targeting products in the future.
Great. Thanks so much, Bami, and it's great to be here with everybody. So yeah, like Bami mentioned, I'd like to take a few minutes and just set some context around where search ads has been and where we'd like to continue to move it forward, in particular as it relates to account structure. So I'll talk about some of the features that have evolved historically, where we want to take them going forward. I'll touch on our search automation North Star that drives a lot of the product work that we'll talk about today. And then I'll just end with how is search targeting implications for some of these initiatives around simpler accounts? And so with that, I will move into the evolution of search ads. So historically, when you think about search ads, you probably think of fine-grained controls like exact and phrase match, static creatives with ETAs, manual bidding at the keyword level, and highly segmented campaigns by geo, match type, or device. And that had served marketers well for several years. But we've been trying to move towards a world of incremental, more automation that's more about expressing your business goal in Google Ads and then letting automation try to optimize that on your behalf. So moving to things like dynamic search ads for scaled landing page targeting, responsive search ads for more dynamic ad creative, moving to conversion-based bidding as sort of the foundation for expressing your goals in Google, and then starting to think about how can I simplify campaigns by bid and budget, for example. And then where we really want to continue to take the product is in particular for targeting, leading into broad match and smart bidding as the marquee search targeting product. And then layering on Performance Max for multi-channel demand when it makes sense for your business, also known as the power pair that we talked about at Google Marketing Live. That also applies to things like bidding and creative. So making sure you have great high quality assets that are good or excellent ad strength, potentially moving from conversion-based to value-based bidding, if that makes sense to your business, so that you can bid dynamically across the heterogeneous types of searches that you receive. And then in terms of structure, that means things like moving towards potentially bigger, well-themed campaigns that are really centered around the business objective that's important to you. And so moving on to then how does we think of the automation North Star in particular as it relates to account structure? So for us as a product team, our goal is really to try to automate goal achievement on your behalf using the inputs that you provide. But one of those key things is we want to try to reduce the number of inputs that's necessary to maximize performance. So that's something that me and my team focus on quite a bit. So how can we find the pockets of performance or other ways to drive value for you, while at the same time making it easier to use in the product and also enabling simplification, be that device, geo, or keyword simplification over time, such that you don't have to add all these inputs to get the performance you expect out of Google Ads. And then, so in particular, how does that relate to search targeting? And so sort of three key aspects I'll touch on. The first is that we want to make sure we can achieve your business objectives by expanding reach in a way that makes sense. And so for us, this is really this power pair of broad match for maximizing your search channel performance, and then layering on Performance Max for that incremental multi-channel buying that I mentioned. But it's important to note that to buy into that, you have to make a mindset shift to really embrace automation. And so this does mean letting go of some things like fine-grained keyword control with manual bidding, or if you're going to choose to run Performance Max, being cognizant that you're going to run multi-channel so that we can maximize performance across all of Google's inventory. And then finally, we're trying to make sure that we can continue to simplify search targeting. So making the existing tools that are available even more powerful, such that a handful of broad match keywords, for example, can help you capture all the traffic that's important to your business, such that you don't have to focus on keyword mining or adding hundreds or thousands of keywords to get performance. We should be able to deliver that based on the minimum number of broad match keywords that you're able to provide. So I hope that gave you a little bit of a flavor of how the Search Ads product suite continues to evolve. And I'm excited to hand over to Brooks, who's going to talk more about account structure.
Thanks very much, Brandon. Yeah, excited about the evolution of things, and I think that sets up this next section really well. So without further ado, I'll jump into a quick demo on how we're thinking about these legacy structures being simplified at scale. So in this existing example here, you can see for existing campaigns in an MCC managed sort of account with these different accounts that exist, one being a product account. We're looking at a couple of campaigns that are really just different based on the device segmentation used here. So in campaign A, this women's shoe campaign is really distinguished by desktop users as the target versus mobile in campaign B. Otherwise, it's a lot of the same keywords, duplicate ad groups across both, same thing with URLs targeted, and a lot of the campaign settings you can see noted here. Things like budget, their goals overall, bid strategy, language, and country. So there's a lot here that we see immediately, right? Like that is duplicated. So moving on into what we envision this looking like in a simplified state is sort of the same setup with these accounts underneath the MCC, but underneath this product account, we see a example consolidated campaign where women's shoes is no longer segmented by device type. Using automated bidding, we can achieve those same targeted goals and still maintain, now a much simpler state of a campaign that is singular, which maintains those same goals. Doesn't have any dip in traffic or anything like that, but maintains the best of performance. Notably, things like, once we make this consolidation, the idea would be to have the best performing creatives that would be selected from those two previous campaigns into this consolidated campaign. Maintaining that same, sort of account performance in the past, but using those simplified assets. So we're really excited to, see how this goes and bring this to you as, we help you adapt these modern structures into existing accounts. So now to move on to some activation and resourcing. So you will certainly be familiar with a lot of these existing recommendations. Our goal here this year is really to align these with simplicity and demonstrate how they can be used towards simplification goals. For add keyword, our goal has been to continue to refine how we select these incremental keywords that we recommend for you to add. And building on last year's, sort of continued gains towards doing this, this is still a priority for us this year, and we encourage you to use this as a way to select, the most incremental keywords when you are going for coverage expansion. With add broad, as Brandon was mentioning, broad keywords can really be used. Once you do sort of, understand this new approach with simplification, to really be more selective about this group of broad keywords and this minimal set used, as opposed to replicating all exact or phrase keywords in broad. And then lastly, the redundant keyword recommendation. We know this has been used to remove low keyword or low traffic keywords in the past, and we want you to continue to use this as a simplification lever to streamline management to this fewest keywords that can retain that full campaign performance. So all three of these will be super useful this year. And then to sort of revisit maybe some things that you may have seen recently that we've just announced in terms of guidance for account structure. We have the ABCs, which at their sort of state are 3 key actions that we would like all advertisers to take in their search accounts this year. And so these really represent sort of what we know is changing about account structures, and that this is, as Bemi mentioned, a daunting, complex, and not necessarily like a priority for all advertisers. But the aim of these ABCs really is to provide a digestible introduction to our best practices and help you understand and feel like these can be easily actioned on. This isn't some big thing that needs to be too overthought. This is really, when it comes down to it, there are some key actions to take. So with that, I'll jump into each of these to give you a little more explanation for each three. So with the first one around aligning account structure with AI, this is really about moving away from single keyword ad groups and transitioning these into themed keywords or themed ad groups, excuse me. And this is important because if traffic continues to be segmented in this style with single keyword ad groups, smart bidding is continuing to be less efficient in accomplishing those goals. Same thing with themed ad groups. Grouping these keywords really into these sort of similar themes makes it easier for our systems and automation to understand the keywords, understand the context, and route the traffic to the best ad that should be served on behalf of that query. So that's the first piece. Moving on to, oh yeah, sure. So just to sort of articulate this quickly, we'll have this example here where you can see there are multiple ad groups across different types of products, but some of these could be themed closer to be able to bring these keywords together and the creatives within them. So we envision this in a simplified state looking like the following, where there are half as many ad groups with a more tightly themed keywords across, in this example, sort of the men's clothing items, women's clothing, and children's clothing. So just to give you sort of an example to put this into practice. And then moving on to the next piece of the ABCs is bringing match types together. So the importance behind this really comes down to a couple of things. One being that, as we know, as broad match has evolved, it really has become the only match type that uses all of our signals available to understand intent, find the most relevant match types that are expected for performance. And then because exact and phrase match have to adhere to sort of more strict requirements, they're restricted from using these additional signals, which we know can help with expanding traffic and really getting you that best performance when using automation together. And I think to mention on the back end of this, there really isn't a ton of additional benefit to having multiple match types in here. As we know, broad match is going to be able to reach those same searches as exact and phrase plus more. So transitioning into tightly themed ad groups into a single ad group, and then being able to simplify is really important because at that point, exact and phrase follow different sort of strategies for coverage. So we can accomplish this goal of having less inputs in broad match and being able to accomplish those goals for that reason alone. So then to put this into practice as well, this will look in the state of these three ad groups where we've got match types broken out individually. And then in simplified state, we'd like to move all of these match types into a clear theme that we then can consolidate keywords underneath to the simplest set needed. And then finally, we'd like to talk about consolidation and cleanup of these keywords. So going back to the device segmentation that I mentioned at the start with the demo, we really want to move folks or help them understand the importance of moving to segmenting campaigns based on these business objectives and away from device segmentation that breaks these things up unnecessarily. This process of cleanup also helps with removing duplicates and non-serving keywords as well, which is really important too. So I think, on the tail end of this, the important thing to note here is that smart bidding really is taking into account a lot of these sort of things like the device segmentation. And if you're using a smart bidding strategy, this sort of segmentation isn't needed to accomplish those same goals of considering targeting for different device types where that might be, suitable for the user experience. So to put this into practice as well, we'll show another example where, as we sort of mentioned in the first demo, we have these separate ad groups that are also used within a campaign for shoes, across different devices. And in a simplified state, when using smart bidding, you should be able to, comfortably move this to a single campaign where you can still target device type within, but be able to consolidate that footprint dramatically. So we're really excited about this as well, and hopefully these pieces, these are understandable and decipherable, and you should feel comfortable being able to implement these immediately. So moving on to the roadmap, we know everyone's excited about the next steps for simplification, what that means for account structures. So just like to pull back the curtain a little bit to be able to speak about the next things coming soon. We really have a multi-pronged approach for simplification this year. And these really come down to advancements we're making on your behalf around automated ways to simplify, but also user-assisted or advertiser-assisted improvements as well. So in terms of automation, we're really excited to perform a lot of this account cleanup on your behalf using things like auto-pausing low activity ad groups, which was recently launched, and then also things like auto-pausing keywords as well with low activity to really help you focus on those things that are going to help really drive performance. And then in terms of assistive technologies, we're really excited about simplification recommendations and their performance, or their improvements rather, excuse me. So things like the existing keyword removal recommendation, and its role to be able to help you fully remove redundant and non-performant keywords. We want to continue to expand things like this to make them even more scalable, more useful, and ways which you can engage with accomplishing the simplification goals. And then lastly, but certainly not least, is how do we help you adapt with scaling these solutions and kind of doing kind of a one-click approach to simplifying and the best practices that would lend you to being able to do this per your business line, vertical, and in these sort of specificities. So we're working on innovative tools to help you do this exactly, and in using our AI to do this. So we're excited to announce some new things coming soon, and also the guidance to help you feel equipped to be able to use these at scale and with ease. All right, now I'll pass it back off to Benny to do best practices and recap. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Brooks and Brandon. We are really excited to equip you all with some of these tools and resources to hopefully simplify your accounts. Again, consider some of these legacy best practices, kind of like the manual bidding of search targeting. Over segmentation, which is like often creating those multiple ad groups for the same keyword, and segmenting by match type or device was once thought to give us more control, but now it's just leading to more complexity, and we see some inefficiencies with like campaign matching if the settings are so similar. It can also lead to underutilized inputs, especially with having very, very similar match types, similar keywords like shoes versus shoe. Again, this can lead to us matching to the wrong landing page or even just some keywords not actually serving. And we do see that you all are kind of spending a lot of time with trying to create some modern structures and get your campaigns to react like some of the existing AI solutions we have, like PMax and Broadmatch. So it's, again, making it more difficult for our systems to really choose the right ad. We hope that today, with some of these new best practices, you'll be able to restructure your accounts to actually optimally leverage our AI systems. So again, to get the most out of our AI-powered ad solutions while we continue to build products and make it easier, we want you to first think about checking for constraints, analyze your accounts to identify any factors like negative keywords or exact match keywords that might be restricting some traffic. Don't hesitate to reach out to your account teams or our support teams for assistance. Like we've mentioned, we have some new resourcing also available internally to help with some of these account structure or account restructures. And then also feel free to follow those ABCs that we went through. And additionally, we are launching some updates to external help centers, like unlocking the power of search targeting to help you with this. So we thank you again for joining today, and we'll move over to Q&A to answer some of your burning questions. Okay, thank you all for submitting. I think it'll appear soon. So, all right, starting with the first question, I believe this one is for Brooks. So account restructuring can be time intensive and there's no guarantee of improved performance. How long should we expect our campaigns/accounts to ramp after a restructure?
Yeah, this is a great question. I think impact to performance from consolidating account structures, especially with campaigns using smart bidding strategies, really should mimic any other change that that would really impact smart bidding performance and sort of the timelines and the general guidance used for those. So for things like bid strategies, it can take up to 2 to 3 conversion cycles for a bid strategy to calibrate to a new objective. Although things can be faster if just sort of depending on the amount of conversion data present. But also, we've got conversion data from previous campaigns that can really help drive faster results by speeding up just the initial learning period required for smart bidding to calibrate towards those goals. And then otherwise, I'd say these changes really should be made with the expectation that they wouldn't impact things like, existing traffic volume, impressions, clicks, conversions, things like that compared to the previous setup. So I think otherwise it really should follow your existing understanding of the ramp time needed for any other, sort of existing change you would make to a bidding strategy or to account sort of entities that would change.
Awesome. Thanks. I know we get this question a lot. So another question, how should we compare or measure performance after an account restructure?
Yeah, this is another good one. And I think this will continue to evolve, but I do think as you're doing sort of small tests, I think pre-post tests are great. I think we would recommend measuring things like at least 4 weeks of data, if not more, really just kind of comparing this sort of traffic to ensure that traffic is maintained and that, you've successfully transitioned things into the simplified state where you can start to make those additional changes. But I would really compare things like, again, this traffic data like clicks, impressions, conversions, in their totality from the previous campaigns that are considered, and then the measuring against those for that amount of data, amount of time for data collection over like I mentioned, at least 4 weeks for that consolidated campaign with the traffic. So I think that's an excellent way to start testing if we're doing small testing for specific markets or things like that. So hopefully that's useful.
Yeah, and also again, you can work with your account teams to kind of do a rollout of the account changes versus doing one massive change at one time. So thank you so much, Brooks. So I think our next question is for Brandon. So brand safety is important to most marketers. How is Google ensuring that AI and automated solutions take into account brand guidelines?
Yeah, so first of all, we really recognize the importance of brand for marketers. In particular, on search, this brand versus generic divide is really important. But getting to the heart of the question, I'd say first, from just sort of an AI and improvement perspective, we're constantly working to improve broad match. This includes making improvements to the models and the techniques that we use such that we can find new performant traffic, but not stray too much off topic such that we get into an area that may not be suitable for your business. And at the same time, we're trying to marry this improved automation with new controls. And so I'll talk about a couple things. So in terms of brand suitability, we've introduced account level negative keywords that apply across all search-based inventory. And so this is a great way to manage terms or other basically searches that you just wouldn't want to show up on regardless of performance, because that will apply across all your campaign types. And then at the campaign level, you continue to have negative keywords if there's certain terms you don't want to show on in general there. In terms of then managing the brand versus generic divide, we have introduced what we call brand restrictions for broad match, such that you can say, I want to run broad match, but I want to make sure it only matches on queries that contain this brand or these lists of brands that I provide. And then in PMAX, you have a tool called brand exclusions, where you can say, I just don't want to show on these specific brand terms. And that's actually a more powerful way than negative keywords, and because brand exclusions will match things like variations, abbreviations, and other variants that just aren't picked up by negative keywords. So I would say, to recap, we understand it's really important. It's really important for us to get that right. We're trying to make sure we do it in the core of the product, and then also provide tools for you to help shape it via negative keywords, as well as some of the brand controls as well.
Great. Thank you, Brandon. So over to our next question. With keyword theming being the dominant way to structure campaigns and ad groups, how many keywords should we include? At what minimum do returns diminish when a theme is built? I think I'll pass this to Brooks.
Yeah. I think another great question. I think this gets back to this topic of then I think that the number really shouldn't be the goal as much as eliminating this sort of duplicative and or variations of keywords that we see grow exponentially from using this sort of exact match or phrase match only strategy for coverage. So, I think this really gets to a broad match specifically. I'm not sure if that's mentioned exactly, but I would say with broad match, sort of our data suggests that, somewhere in the neighborhood of like 25 to 50 broad keywords really should oftentimes be adequate for covering related searches. But this will depend on the unique variations of searches that are used, that you come in contact with, looking at search terms report, things like this. So, I think you shouldn't cap yourself, but really think about this process as moving away from sort of the very granular strategy of covering your full amount of query coverage or the searches that would come from the keywords used. So if there's a lot of overlap going on, that's probably a good sign that you could bring this down. Or if you do feel like it's not a lot, if there's more, then I think this is where you can use tools like recommendations to add on as needed. But I think that number on 25 to 50 is a good place to start, or at least to aim for, and then be able to kind of trim down.
Great. Thanks, Brooks. I think that, again, it also speaks to theming and making sure that we are putting in keywords and inputs that actually are driving your business as well. And then, like Brooks said, we can always trim down or add more as we go on. So over to the next question. Brandon, is there a benefit to having brand keywords in the same ad group as non-brand so that all keywords have more access to higher quality query signals?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I would say it probably depends on your goal. And if you don't want to separate brand from generic, for example, you can certainly have the same keywords, brand and non-brand, in the same ad group. And I would go so far as to say that you could even just run the non-brand version as long as they're generic versions of the brand keyword, because those generic versions will already capture that brand traffic as well. And so I wouldn't focus so much on maybe the query signals aspect of this part. I would think more like, what is my business objective? If I want to separate brand and non-brand, then they should be in separate ad groups or even separate campaigns if you want to separate your budgets. But if your goal is really just to drive traffic around these terms, by all means, you can keep them in the same ad group.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's definitely a good call out. So it's not necessarily about covering, but understanding what is the goal of the campaign. Is it to get that extra reach, or do you want to own that brand message?
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks. So, Brooks, what is the maximum number of ad groups in a campaign? You kind of touched on this with keywords. Do we have a maximum?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it short here. I mean, I think that like in terms of our guidance, 50 to 100 is probably suitable. But again, I think this really comes down to things that we've all kind of mentioned around just the feasibility of business goals and like segmenting based on the things that are really driving value, not duplicating where you can simplify that value into a singular, campaign and the ad groups and keywords needed to do that as well. So yeah, I think that's where our guidance would be. But again, this is something that really should be driven at the end of the day by those business goals and the business value that you're trying to define within these accounts.
Thank you. So over to the next question. How can we define the balance of segmentation from a campaign, ad group, and keyword standpoint?
Yeah, I think this also sort of touches on this a similar aspect of removing segmentation where it separates relevant business value and separates also just the keywords that could be brought together to bring things like broad match, better context, and utilize routing to continue that part of being a key action towards simplifying structures and things like this. So bringing thematically similar keywords and ads together for creating context, like I mentioned, is really going to be where automation is going to be able to work on your behalf the best. So as we, sort of segment, this typically will make that more difficult for automation to make sense of. But as I mentioned, there are definitely going to be examples of advertisers where, like, if you are removing segmentation, or there really is an opportunity to remove segmentation because this is being done to define targets that are specific to geographical markets, things like this. That some of that segmentation we recognize as a good thing, and continues to help you define those business values and things that you're tracking individually as they should be segmented. So it's not like a one size fits all here, but where you can remove that and it seems obvious to be able to do so using the principles that we sort of touched on earlier in the presentation. I think that that's where we want to say, hey, like this should be used. This is sort of this is a win-win.
Thanks. And I think we also recognize is it's going to look different across industries, right? A large aggregator might need more segmentation versus a smaller mom and pop. So we do hope to have more industry focused and like vertical guidance later. But generally, I think we do have like guidance on thinking about following those ABCs. So you're leveraging broad match, RSA, and like those inputs to actually drive your campaign performance. But go ahead and move it over to the next question. So what is the best strategy for incorporating exact match keywords into the broad match structure? I think I'm going to pass this over to Brandon. We get this a lot.
Yeah, great question. We know everybody still loves exact match. So I think it sort of just depends on your business objectives. And so a pattern we often see is people have existing phrase or exact match setups. They start by adding broad match in that same ad group to test performance. And then it's important to note that the broad match keyword is going to cover all the traffic from exact and phrase plus more. So the match types are concentric circles in that broad is going to cover everything exact and phrase cover. And so once you're in that world, there's really no additional benefit when you have exact and phrase in the same ad group. And you could simplify if you're willing to do so, because you're going to cover that same traffic. Now, something else we see advertisers often have, though, is there might be certain terms or pockets of traffic where they want to own the share of voice or really own those terms. And so that's where exact can work really well if you have a dedicated budget for something that's a little bit different than a conversion or conversion value objective. And you want to have sort of a little bit tighter radius around, I want to own specific terms about my business or my brand. We still see exact working well in that setup. But again, it's important to note, as long as you're trying to maximize conversions and conversion value, broad is going to cover everything the other match types cover and more. But then, yeah, if there's specific objectives that maybe don't fit that mold, or where you want to try something new, perhaps with a different budget, other strategies can make sense. So.
Right. Thank you. Sorry, I think I was muted there. But yeah, I guess again, we showed earlier that having that exact keyword or negative can actually be leading to constraints, even if you have that broad match. So again, make sure to check your constraints in your accounts. It's always great to kind of just do some type of like monthly report to make sure that you aren't accidentally blocking some valuable traffic. Okay, cool. So over to the next question. This one is for Brandon as well. I'm curious about combining brand and non-brand keywords in the same ad group. Would the signals from brand keywords help non-brand keywords performance if we use broad match? I think we covered this a bit, but Brandon?
Yeah, we did touch on it before, but I'll just reiterate again. I think it sort of depends on your objective. I would say if you want to separate brand and generic, have different messages or different budgets, those really should be in separate campaigns and ad groups, so you have that level of control. But if your goal is really just to maximize value on a given set of keywords, then really they can be combined in the same ad group. And I would go so far as to say you could really consolidate into the generic terms, which should pick up that branded traffic as well. So yeah, it kind of depends on your objective. I would think less so about the pooling of signals and more, do I want to separate brand and generic, or am I comfortable just matching any traffic in this given campaign or ad group?
Awesome. Thank you. Over to the next question. So this one's for Brooks. How can we maintain relevant ad copy with simplified structures and broad match keywords in home services specifically, especially when specific service terms often match general keywords? For example, drain services matching with plumber near me.
Yeah, this is a great question. So we really think about this sort of trifecta of broad match with smart bidding. And then that third pillar is creative automation at scale, because this is really important for marketers to make sure they have a good end user experience as they go broader with targeting. And so I'd say the solution that we've been partnering with the creatives organization on is responsive search ads with automatically created assets as a way to automatically generate assets and relative creative content that's going to marry with some of these broader searches you get with broad match, such that you can still have a really great user experience, even for some of these broader searches that you might not have thought about when you were putting in your creative assets to start, for example. And so this is a pretty core investment area for us with the creative team, because we realize this is one of the key features that marketers really want to make sure works well when they lean into broad match. And so I don't have anything to announce here, but there's a lot of stuff we're working with internally to try to make sure that this works really well at scale. So RSA with automatically created assets is sort of the solution we have at the moment to help make sure we have good creative relevance for broader targeting.
Thank you. It's great to hear that our teams are speaking to each other. I think we definitely want to provide the best guidance we can. Cool. So over to Brooks. How much of an improvement are you seeing for brands who change their account structure? Is there an improvement for all industries, or do other industries see a bigger change than others?
Yeah, so I think another great question. And that this is where we'll be continuing to release more and more information about who this impacts, what the impact is, et cetera, over the rest of this year. But so far, case studies that we've done have shown that thematic consistency and sort of the resulting consolidation from those at the ad group and campaign level makes automation much more predictable and interpretable for all customers. So I think that alone is a good thing for everyone to explore and start to test and understand at their level. And as I said, we'll continue to bring more data around how that affects other folks and different verticals, things like this, as we pursue this. So I mean, some things I can share so far are that, I think there's industries that are like, travel, retail, finance that have shown awesome gains in terms of ROAS, conversions, and CPAs with considerable reductions to the number of campaigns and keywords and things like this that we're looking to reduce. So we're, as I mentioned, we'll be looking to release a claim later this year to highlight the value of simplification in these areas and continue to provide guidance that's tailored to each of your needs. So be on the lookout for that. But yeah, hopefully that gives you a good insight at this point into the impact and what we see, sort of the compelling data behind.
Yes, thank you, Brooks. We're really excited for a lot of these resources, and we'll have some additional case studies along with the Bond Pre one that we shared earlier. So I think the next question is also for you. While consolidating keywords may benefit smart bidding, are there expectations where more granular ad groups offer better control over ad creative for specific search queries? For example, city-specific ad groups. So you're just kind of touching on travel.
Yeah. I mean, this is another great call out. I think things like campaigns and ad groups that are geo-specific certainly have a purpose for clearly defining targets and duplicating keywords where, this like the targets that would be assigned to these should be different. And like, there's no reason to combine these given that like that would lose some of that business value that's inherently part of those structures. So those sort of things that are based on those markets, like, for example, a car dealership in a different city or things like this, we see as things that represent, they might create some amount of more duplication within accounts, but are things that are establishing clear business value. So not things we're looking to eliminate in this process. So as we've all three of us have mentioned this in this sort of presentation and across other questions, this really does come back to business value and just really the need to create segmentation for business value differences that can't be handled by smart bidding within a campaign. So that's what it comes down to for me. Hopefully that's useful to answer this question. But another great call out.
Oh, thank you. Brandon, not sure if you have anything else to add on this.
Nothing specific. I think Brooks really touched on it. I do think we do see this geo-specific messaging being something that's important, or like tailoring ad copy. We do have other solutions for scale targeting. For example, dynamic search ads does a nice job. And we're trying to make sure that with some of those improvements we were mentioning about trying to make RSAs work well, how can we do that for keyword-based campaigns in a scalable way as well? So yeah, again, we think there are certain reasons why specific business-based segmentation makes sense, but we're also trying to improve the product such that you can do it in a much cleaner, more automated and simple way if you follow our best practices.
Thank you. So over to the next question. Will there be any AI-powered account organization tools rolling out in the next coming months, Brooks?
Yeah, I love this question. I'm excited to announce these things soon, so do stay tuned. I've certainly alluded to this during the roadmap section as much as possible, but we are working on a number of exciting features to help you simplify at scale. and be able to test as well in a way that makes sense. We can provide in Google Ads. So we're looking to both provide these scalable tools, but also still require your input and your expertise to tailor the final solutions to your business and to your customer's business. So hopefully that's an exciting answer for now.
Yes, I mean, we definitely have heard this. We've done a lot of surveys and customer calls, so we hope that these solutions will be helpful, and we're excited to be working on them. So I know we're almost done with questions. I want to pass it over to Brandon for one of our last. What's in Google's roadmap for AI-based ad products in general? Will AI eventually replace keyword targeting completely?
So we get a similar question quite often. I would say um, the short answer is we think the best path for delivering value for advertisers is to leverage automation with your expertise. And so automation is only as good as the data that you're able to provide. And we think the guidance or the control around automation is really important for maximizing value for advertisers and also giving them a sense of trust that automation is going to do the right thing on their behalf. And so I would kind of go back to the automation North Star I touched on in the beginning. So our goal is to continue to try to provide additional value via improved targeting and bidding and creative across the product suite and doing it in a way that provides advertiser control. But we think doing that will then also enable you to have to provide fewer inputs to get that maximum value. So trying to make the value per input curve shift outwards such that you're able to get a lot more value out of Google Ads for a lot less work. And so even in that model, we don't necessarily see keywords going away. We think there's a lot of unique business data that can be passed in keywords that you provide us that isn't capturable via like creative assets or landing pages or even the conversion event. And so we do see a role even in this automation future where advertisers are able to provide those unique inputs into what is important to their business. And so yeah, we think again, it's sort of this combination of automation with your expertise that is the future. And there is a role for keywords in that world.
Yeah, thank you. I think no, that was great insights into what's happening with AI. And maybe just to kind of close out, we can end on the last question of how to kind of balance budgets here. So if we go over. So how can broad match be balanced with limited budget? Is broad match not recommended when impression share is low?
Yeah,
And
so I'll answer these questions sort of independently. So first on the budget point, again, it kind of comes back to your objective, right? But I would say broad match in combination with maximize conversions or maximize conversion value, if you have a fixed budget that you want to maximize, works really great in practice because broad match is actually able to get you into oftentimes auctions or queries that exact or phrase might not be eligible for, which could potentially be more performant in that they don't have as much competition. And so you might actually see more total conversion or value volume with broad match, even in a limited budget. So that's something to keep in mind that broad can work really well, even if you have a limited budget, as long as your goal is to maximize value or conversions. The second part about impression share, super interesting question. Impression share keeps to come up as a lot of this sort of secondary metrics that advertisers care about in addition to conversions or value. I would say it kind of depends on your goal. Like if you have a more share of voice goal, and you're really trying to target high impression share on specific terms or like a smaller slice of traffic, broad might not be the right fit for that objective because the universe of the queries you're eligible for is just so broad. But if your goal really is, I have an X budget, I want to maximize the value I get out of Google Ads, I wouldn't focus on impression share in that world. I would focus on is broad and smart bidding delivering the conversions and value that I care about. And we see the vast majority of the times that really is the case. So I think it just depends, right? If impression share is not the primary goal, broad match works really well. If you have sort of this other goal, like I want to have share of voice, then you should probably think about, is broad match the right goal for this specific budget that I have in mind?
thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Brandon and Brooks. I think all of this has been really clear, and we hope that the message hits home that AI can help and automation can help, but again, we still need your inputs to actually help our systems work. And it starts by giving us those values that actually matter to you. So we want to say, again, thank you so much for joining this session today. Those were all the questions that we had. This has been really great for us. We're super excited to continue to deliver on some of the resources that we mentioned. There is a survey that has gone out, so please make sure to fill that out as well. And again, check out all of the resources that we shared and the links available to you. Again, thank you for joining today.